Marcus and Elena had been together for 2 years. They'd had the conversation about moving in together, about building something more permanent, about what the next 5 years might look like. Elena brought it up one Sunday. What if we bought a place? Marcus looked at her, then at the New York skyline outside the window, then back at her. Have you seen apartment prices?
I knew it was complicated, but my parents owned their home. It was the biggest financial asset they had. My mom talked about equity like it was something sacred. "You're not throwing money away," she always said. "When you rent, you're paying someone else's mortgage." I'd heard that my whole life. I believed it. Julian was about to complicate that belief significantly.
The renting is throwing money away idea is one of the most persistent myths in personal finance. It's not entirely wrong, but it's not entirely right either. Whether buying beats renting financially depends on four things: how long you stay, the price-to-rent ratio in your specific market, what you do with the capital you don't put into a down payment, and the true full cost of homeownership, which is always higher than people expect.
The price-to-rent ratio: divide the purchase price of a home by the annual rent for a comparable home. A ratio below 15 generally favors buying. Between 15 and 20, neutral, depends on your situation. Above 20, renting is often financially superior. In New York City, the price-to-rent ratio for many neighborhoods exceeds 30, sometimes 40. By this metric alone, renting in Manhattan is often the mathematically rational choice.
Julian ran the specific numbers for our situation. A comparable one-bedroom in our neighborhood, purchase price $650,000. Annual rent for the same unit, $24,000. Price-to-rent ratio, 27. That means it would take 27 years of rent payments to equal the purchase price, not counting interest, maintenance, taxes, or the opportunity cost of the down payment sitting in real estate instead of the market.
The true cost of homeownership. People see the mortgage payment. They don't see property taxes in New York, often 1 to 1.5% of assessed value annually. Homeowners insurance, $1,500 to $3,000 per year. Maintenance, financial advisors suggest budgeting 1% of the home's value per year for repairs and upkeep. On a $650,000 home, that's $6,500 per year, $541 per month in maintenance alone, on top of everything else.
On a $650,000 home with a 20% down payment, $130,000. The remaining $520,000 is financed at a 30-year fixed mortgage. At a 7% interest rate, the monthly payment is approximately $3,460. Add property taxes of roughly $700 per month, insurance $150 per month, and maintenance averaging $541 per month. Total monthly cost, approximately $4,851. A comparable rental in the same neighborhood, $2,000 to $2,500.
The $130,000 down payment was the number that ended the conversation immediately. We had $10,000 combined in savings that weren't already allocated. But Julian said, "Let's finish the analysis before you rule it out. And let's talk about what you'd do with $130,000 if you kept it invested instead of putting it into a home." He was right. The down payment isn't just a cost, it's an opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost of the down payment: $130,000 invested in a diversified index fund at an average 8% annual return over 30 years becomes approximately $1.3 million. That $130,000 doesn't disappear when you put it in a home, but it becomes illiquid, and its return is limited to your home's appreciation rate. In markets where home values appreciate 3 to 4% annually, the invested alternative consistently outperforms.
The case for buying, and it's real. You build equity with every mortgage payment. A portion of each payment reduces your principal, and over time you own more of the asset outright. You're protected from rent increases. Your fixed-rate mortgage payment stays the same for 30 years while rents rise. You can customize and improve the property. And in many markets, home appreciation over decades has created generational wealth.
Home equity is the primary source of wealth for most American households. The median net worth of a homeowner is approximately $300,000. The median net worth of a renter, approximately $8,000. That 37-to-1 ratio reflects decades of forced savings through equity building, but it also reflects selection bias. Homeowners tend to have higher incomes, more stable employment, and longer time horizons than renters. Correlation, not pure causation.
What Julian said, that stuck with me. Real estate is a great investment when you buy at the right price, hold long enough, and don't over-leverage. It's a poor investment when you buy at peak prices, move in 5 years, and pay realtor fees on both sides of the transaction. The people who build wealth in real estate aren't the people who bought at the perfect moment. They're the people who held long enough for time to work in their favor.
Transaction costs in real estate are enormous and often underestimated. Closing costs typically run 2 to 5% of the purchase price. On $650,000, that's $13,000 to $32,500 paid up front. Selling, realtor commissions average 5 to 6% of the sale price. On a $650,000 home, that's $32,500 to $39,000 gone. Combined, buying and selling the same home costs 8 to 11% of its value. You need significant appreciation just to break even.
The 5-year rule of thumb. In most markets, buying only makes financial sense if you plan to stay for at least 5 years, ideally 7 or more. In the first 5 years of a mortgage, the vast majority of your payment goes to interest, not principal. You're barely building equity. Combined with transaction costs on both ends, selling before year 5 often means taking a loss, even if the home's market value increased.
How a 30-year mortgage amortizes. On a $520,000 loan at 7%, your first monthly payment of $3,460 includes approximately $3,033 in interest and only $427 in principal. By year 10, you're paying roughly $2,700 in interest and $760 in principal. By year 25, the balance finally tips more principal than interest per payment. The bank gets paid first. You build equity slowly in the early years.
We weren't buying in New York City. The math was clear. But Julian said something important. The rent versus buy calculation changes dramatically by city. In Memphis, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Birmingham, price-to-rent ratios below 10 make buying the obvious financial choice. The advice, renting is throwing money away, might be accurate in those cities. In San Francisco or New York, the same advice can cost you tens of thousands over a decade.
Down payment options beyond the standard 20%. FHA loans allow down payments as low as 3.5% with a credit score above 580, but require mortgage insurance premiums that add to your monthly cost. Conventional loans are available with as little as 3% down for first-time buyers. VA loans, for veterans and active military, allow zero down payment with no mortgage insurance. First-time homebuyer programs in many states offer grants and low-interest assistance.
Mortgage insurance, PMI, is required on conventional loans when your down payment is less than 20%. It protects the lender, not you, and costs approximately 0.5 to 1.5% of the loan annually. On a $520,000 loan, that's $2,600 to $7,800 per year, $217 to $650 per month, added to your payment until your equity reaches 20%. It disappears when your equity hits 20%, but it significantly increases your early year cost.
The 28% mortgage rule. Your monthly mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. At $52,000 annual salary, Marcus's gross monthly income is approximately $4,330. $28%, $1,212 per month. That's the maximum a standard lender recommends for housing costs. A $650,000 home with a $4,851 monthly cost would require a household income of roughly $208,000 to meet this guideline.
The conversation shifted. Instead of "can we buy in New York now?" the question became, "what would it take to buy somewhere someday if we wanted to?" Julian said. Save for a down payment in a high-yield savings account specifically dedicated to the goal. Build credit to qualify for the best rates. A credit score of 760 saves dramatically on mortgage interest. Define the geography, maybe not New York, maybe somewhere else in 5 years. Goals require plans.
The interest rate difference on mortgages by credit score is substantial. A borrower with a 760-plus score on a $400,000 mortgage at current rates might qualify for 6.9%. A borrower with a 680 score might receive 7.5%. Over 30 years, that 0.6% difference on $400,000 is approximately $55,000 in additional interest paid. Your credit score, built years before you need a mortgage, determines your mortgage rate for 30 years.
Julian told us about house hacking, buying a multifamily property, a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, living in one unit and renting out the others. The rental income offsets your mortgage payment, sometimes dramatically. A duplex with two identical units, you occupy one, rent the other, effectively cuts your housing cost in half. FHA financing is available for multifamily properties up to 4 units with owner occupancy.
Real estate as an investment, separate from your primary residence, operates differently. Rental property generates monthly cash flow, provides mortgage interest and depreciation deductions, and appreciates over time. Depreciation, the IRS allows you to deduct a portion of the property's value annually as if it were losing value, even as it appreciates, is one of the most powerful tax advantages in the entire code, available to real estate investors.
Cap rate, capitalization rate, is the primary metric for evaluating rental property. Take the annual net operating income, rents collected minus operating expenses, not including mortgage, and divide by the purchase price. A $300,000 property generating $18,000 in annual net income has a cap rate of 6%. In strong markets, 4 to 6% is typical. In higher risk markets, you want 8% or more to compensate for the additional risk.
REITs, real estate investment trusts, allow ordinary investors to own income-producing real estate without being landlords. You buy REIT shares the same way you buy stocks. The REIT owns apartments, offices, shopping centers, warehouses, or hospitals, collects rent, and is required by law to distribute at least 90% of taxable income to shareholders as dividends. REITs provide real estate exposure without the concentration risk of owning a single property.
We decided to add REITs to our investment portfolio as a real estate allocation, about 10% of our total investment mix, without buying physical property yet. We got the diversification benefit of real estate income, zero landlord headaches, complete liquidity, and the ability to invest with $50 instead of $130,000. It wasn't owning a home, but it was owning a piece of thousands of properties.
The psychological value of homeownership is real and not reducible to a spreadsheet. Stability, community roots, the freedom to paint your walls and keep a dog, the pride of ownership. For many people, these non-financial benefits make buying the right decision even when the pure math slightly favors renting. Financial decisions are not purely financial. Knowing the math gives you the ability to make an informed choice, not the obligation to choose the mathematical optimum.
6 months after that conversation, we opened a joint high-yield savings account labeled Future Home. We each contributed $150 per month, $300 combined. At that rate, in 7 years, we'd have $25,200 plus interest, not a New York down payment, but the foundation of one, or a down payment somewhere else, or the option to keep renting if that remained the better choice. The goal wasn't a home. The goal was the choice.
Real estate decisions are long-horizon decisions. The error most people make is buying based on emotion or social pressure, because everyone around them is buying, because renting feels shameful, because their parents owned and assume their children should. The right time to buy is when you're financially ready, when the math supports it in your specific market, and when you plan to stay long enough to recover the transaction costs. Those conditions don't always align with the social timeline.
Final principle, whether you buy or rent, housing is your largest monthly expense. Managing it well, negotiating rent, house hacking, buying at the right price-to-rent ratio, timing the purchase for financial readiness rather than social pressure, has more impact on your lifetime wealth than nearly any investment decision you'll make. The biggest bill deserves the most analysis.
Marcus and Elena didn't buy, not yet. They understood why, not by default, not by surrender, but by calculation. They knew the price-to-rent ratio. They knew the transaction costs. They knew the opportunity cost. And they knew that in their market, at their stage, with their financial situation, renting and investing the difference was the mathematically superior strategy. That's not failing to buy a home. That's making a financial decision.
2 years later, we moved to a slightly larger rental. We negotiated the lease 3 months free in exchange for a 2-year commitment. We kept investing. We kept building the home fund. And Julian said something that stuck. The best home purchase is the one you make when you're ready, not when you're rushed. The market will always have houses. The question is whether you'll be ready when the right one appears. We're getting ready.